Hi, Assalamualaikum. First of all, I will introduce myself. My name is Muhammad Afiq bin Manan. My metric number is 2111027. I will start with introduction. So first part is the meaning of Islamization of knowledge. The Islamization of knowledge is the breaking of the connection between the scientific achievement of human civilization and the transmutation of postulating philosophy, so that the sign may be employed, means of a methodological order that is religious rather than speculative. So, the movement has woken the Muslim world from its comfortable slumber. If the term Islamization had not been used, it would not have drawn the attention of many concerned Muslim and non-Muslim scholars and activists. It's the breaking connection between the scientific achievement of human civilization and the transmutation philosophy. Obviously, they desire to find their own way of life after being held in obedience to the dominant Western thought for a very, very long time. Modern knowledge and Western culture, which emerged from a secular viewpoint, have impacted the Muslim faith during this period. Muslims had to undergo an epistemological revolution to free themselves from his oppression. This process is now known as the Islamization of modern knowledge. Thus, this idea has a deeper significance than just being a slogan, phrase, or a symbol, especially to people who thought and conceptualize it. In 1970s, the Islamization of knowledge was introduced by Said Naqib al-Atas with several principles based on the Quran, such as economy, legal, communication, and so on. The approach brought by him is very prudent and proven to be applicable for all age. Al-Atas espoused an Islamic metaphysics that is synthesis of ideas traditionally upheld by Muslim theologians, philosophers, and tasawwuf in his metaphysics. The reality and concept of God from the major thrusts of the Islamic worldview, and this has deep implication for the concept of knowledge and the concept, content, and method of Islamic education. Al-Atas support the Tawhid way of knowing which combine all of the empirical, logical, deductive, and inductive approach into one. Although in the West, the process of secularization was necessary for natural science to advance and grow, this was not the case in Islam. Muslim scientists do not need to ignore God in nature in order to advance the science. God is not the opponent of natural science, but rather the foundation for it. Muslim is positively certain that Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala is the main provider and the ultimate reason behind everything happen in the world.
So now we move on to the first challenge of the Islamization of knowledge movement, which is the relevancy of Islamization of knowledge movement compared to modern West knowledge culture. Islamization of knowledge is a vast field with many aspects and nuances which have yet to be fully explored. Without comprehensive studies and research, it is difficult to chart a way forward in the Islamization knowledge movement. The main concern for the Islamization of knowledge movement is the question of relevancy itself, as the process of knowledge Islamization movement is not recent but had already been strongly fought by the Islamic jurists. However, due to the Western influence over media and many more platforms, the movement becomes faded under the shadow of the influence. The young generation is inclined more toward the West due to the practice of hedonism and unlimited boundaries among the members of society, including the world of knowledge. It can be seen that in this modern world, the influence of Western culture had to take dominance over the Islamic world, as most of the standard procedures, including the knowledge world, have been in jeopardy, as most people are looking forward to seeking knowledge in Western perspective rather than Islamic perspective. The challenges that Islamization of knowledge movement are facing are mainly to show the relevancy of Islam compared to the Western ideology which they themselves declared to be contemporary and modern, and declaring the teaching of religion are no longer relevant to the modern world. As Allah stated in Surah An-Nahl verse 37 that in tahris ala hudahum fa inna Allah la yahdi man yudil wa ma lahum min nasirin. If you are keen for their guidance, then remember that Allah does not lead those to the right path whom He lets go astray, and for them there are no helpers. As for the impact, the relevancy of certain areas of knowledge should be taken seriously, which includes matters of God-keeping the authenticity of the knowledge itself, especially in areas where it requires deep understanding and has a significant impact on human lives. As we look back in the past, the leniency of the acceptance of knowledge in the knowledge world can cause multiple forgeries and documents, and including the spread of fabricated hadith, which later caused extravagant destruction, especially in Aqidah and also the path of the school of knowledge. The authenticity of knowledge is needed in order to maintain the legitimacy of knowledge and its applicability of it in certain area of knowledge. In the absence of a standard procedure in determining the legitimacy of a certain area of knowledge as practiced in the Western knowledge world, it will just repeat the history when in the Islamic world, the Dark Age started during the era of the assassination of Caliph Uthman, which then led to political difference between Caliph Ali and Muawiyah, where in this era, the fabrication of the wordings of Prophet Muhammad SAW of the Prophet, which is one of the most important sources that build the foundation of Islamic teachings other than Al-Quran, based on the hadith of the Prophet, which Prophet stated that I leave behind me two things, the Quran and the Sunnah, and if you follow this, you will never go astray. Despite the existence of the hadith, people still fabricate the hadith for their own benefits due to the absence of the standard procedure which to ensure the authenticity of the knowledge itself. Therefore, it had become a challenge to the process of Islamization of knowledge movement, since if this movement does not prepare the basic foundation well, then the movement will not sustain for the future of the Muslim. Furthermore, Islamic knowledge shall be regarded to coexist with science and undergo modernization. It must be highlighted that Islam does not just revolve around faith and ibadah, but also covers human daily life. The Quranic text presence is not just about the hereafter, but lessons and new knowledge to the people, for example, in the context of legislation, relationship with humans, the story of the past, and most importantly, science. The idea of secularism had spread around the globe and can be seen now in modern countries, where the separation of religion and government administration happen, which affects the ideology, doctrine among the citizens. Secularism now not just affect the bigger things, but also the way of thinking which absorbing into the Muslim countries and people. The education system also had been affected by this doctrine, where the country, for example Malaysia, instilled the same methodology and education system from the West. The big question mark should be asked on why we didn't create our own that align with the doctrine of Islam. The education system in overall is the biggest problem out of all, because if the mind of the future Muslims are tarnished, then the whole society will indirectly affected. The culture of celebrating and elevating the Western culture in education system should never be supported in the first place. In schools, we learn that science and math is the core subject and was set as the main priority, and the only thing that people look up to, which encourage the youngsters to put aside religious studies and focus only on science and math. In Malaysia, it can be seen that the separation of Islamic schools and science schools, which doesn't show the greatness but the backwardness of our education system. So the question that was raised by this is why the religious teaching was separated at the first place, and shouldn't every Muslim be a master of both Fardul Ain and also Fardul Kifayah? Therefore, there are a lot of things to be amended and improved in order to succeed in the process of Islamization of knowledge.
So my part will discuss the second challenges in terms of Islamization of knowledge, which is the concern of widespread understanding based on confirmation bias. So in this first point, I will talk about how contemporary Muslim community in receiving Western knowledge and ideas. So there is a two possible most common outcomes when Muslim community try to receive Western knowledge. First is accept everything and refuse to learn from Islamic point of view. This can be resulted in reduction of faith. Second is reject everything and refuse to learn from Western point of view. This can be resulted in extreme bias. So how is the most best possible way to learn the Western knowledge and ideas is to accept everything, but also learn from the Islamic point of view. That from that we can be a knowledgeable Muslim, and it's reduce us from the extreme bias, but not reduce our faith. So how can we become this knowledgeable Muslim? First is learn from many Muslim and Western experts. Second is avoid learning from short video and text on social media. Third is read more journals from Islamic and Western view. Fourth is have a discussion with peers. And five is fight doubt with faith. The second subpoint is the misunderstanding view of Muslim community on Western knowledge and ideas. So most Muslims think the Western knowledge is contradicted and cannot be harmonized with Islamic knowledge. Second is learning Western knowledge can reduce our Islamic faith. And third, Westerners try to propagating ideas that can lead Muslims to do sins. This is the most common view from contemporary Muslim society, which is won't accept the Western knowledge and ideas. For example, like the history of Muslim society, the Western knowledge tend to discuss Muslim society based on what they have searched. So they not try to glorify it. They do not try to reduce or make it bad or make it good. What they see is what they write. What they search is what they write. So this is what the Muslim society don't like. For example, like the slavery in the Ottoman era. Most Muslims don't know about this, but the Westerners know about this because they search. Or there's a slavery in the Ottoman era, or like the Arab slave trade. The Muslim didn't want to learn this because it will make their history become bad. They must learn the history which is glorified the name of Muslim. Second is miracle and science. Westerners do not believe in miracle because there must be a science behind that miracle. So Islam or Muslim do not want to have these ideas spread out in their society because it will reduce our Islamic faith. It's like, oh, you don't believe in this, so you don't believe in prophet miracle, something like that. And then third is the most common is origin of humans. For example, like the Darwin theory, where we come from apes and not from Prophet Adam. But it's a misunderstanding view because that's what not the Darwin said, and there is a still theory, and there are no research from the apes. They still have another better theory and better research rather than when we came from the apes. And the fourth is now is a trending propagating ideas among the Westerners is that love is love. Is what the Muslim very scared of, because it will propagating the idea to do a sinful behavior, just like what the people of the Lut, people of the Prophet Lut do, and that's what the Muslim, why many Muslim is don't want to learn the Western ideas because of this, because there's still a misunderstanding view of Muslim community. Okay, so my last sub point is role of religious leaders in preaching their followers. A good religious leaders must at least do these three things: is teach a new knowledge about modern era and relate it with Islamic faith. Second is to strengthen the sense of being a Muslim through Islamic preaching, and the third is to unite the Ummah regardless of their different paradigm. Unfortunately, some of them did not do this, but they tend to do these things. They, they teach Western knowledge with lack of understanding. They avoid the discussion, and they sometimes judge the people based on Islamic understanding. And the last is the worst is extreme propaganda. This extreme propaganda is dangerous because it can lead to a terrorism. So my conclusion from my part is Islamization of knowledge is a good thing, but if we see the current condition of Islamic society, when how they deal with Western knowledge, how they have a misunderstanding view, how the role of religious leaders, which is still lack in Western knowledge, uh, I'm afraid it will ended up in extreme or confirmation bias in knowledge. So everything we just see from the Islamic view we don't see from the Western view. Western view have some advantages, just like a research, just like a new revision year by year. When we still stuck in the middle or in the 14th, 13th, 15th century scholars information, they keep to research every year by year. So we have an advantages. We have a faith, we have a iman. They have another advantages, which is a research, which they just see and write. They do not have this, or we must glorify it, or we don't must glorify it. They never judge about their knowledge. So to Islamize the knowledge, I think is still not the appropriate way in this current condition, because just like I said, the Muslim society still lack in understanding the Western knowledge. Even not just Muslim society, even their religious leaders still lack of it. So it needs sometimes, but it's a good goals. It's a nice way to make the knowledge better. But for now, I think it's not suitable still yet.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nur Arif Wajidi bin Nur Azam with metric number 2118061. And today I am going to presenting about the prospect number 1, which is the from Islamization of knowledge to Islamization of education. Without further ado, let's go. Now, I am going to tell you about the purpose of Islamic education. It is important to know the ultimate aim of education in Islam lies in the realization of the complete submission to and harmony with the will of Allah on the level of the individual, the community, and the humanity at large. Allah said in the Quran, A'udzubillahi minasyaitonirrajim, Qul inna salati wa nusuki wa mahyaya wa mamati lillahi rabbil alamin. Say, truly my prayer and my service of sacrifice, my life and my death are all for Allah, the cherished of the world. So in Surah Al-An'am, ayat 162. And the next, Allah also said, Allah mentioned in the Quran, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. Allah the Almighty says, and I did not create jinn and man except to worship me, in Surah Al-Zariyat ayat 56. And this is the goal which all the prophets and the messenger work toward in their call. Every messenger begin his call by saying, A'udhu billahi minasyaitonir rajim, Ya qawmi a'budullaha ma lakum min ilahin ghayruh. Which means, oh my people, worship Allah, you have no other God but Him, in Surah Al-A'raf ayat 65. This is all about the idea of using knowledge to help people rebuild society. It's a part of Islam that has led to many successful reforms in this Muslim world. Muslim intellectual and political leaders are now at the stage of making more comprehensive changes to improve the life of Muslims. Now, I am going to tell you about the First World Conference on Islamic Education in 1977. Identified the aims of education as follows. First, education should aim at the balance of growth of the personality. Education should seek to develop the whole person, including the spiritual, intellectual, rational self, feelings, and physical sense. Such training should be aimed at imbuing faith in the individual and creating an emotional attachment to Islam, so that he can follow the Quran and Sunnah and be governed by Islamic values willingly and joyfully. This will enable him to fulfill his destiny as the Khalifa Allah has promised. Second, the education should cater for the growth of man in all aspects. It includes spiritual, intellectual, imaginative, physical, scientific, linguistic, both individually and collectively, and motivate this aspect towards goodness and attainment of perfection. The ultimate aim of education in Islam is realization of individuals' complete harmony with the will of Allah at the personal, communal, and human levels. Number 3, the education can facilitate social mobility. The Muslim world education system must provide equal opportunity for all Muslims to attain the highest qualification possible. All barriers must be removed to allow all Muslims to have access to the best education possible. Number 4, the education should promote in the promote in man the creative impulse to rule himself and the universe as a true servant of Allah. The education should help people to develop the creative impulse to rule themselves and the universe as true servants of Allah rather than opposing and coming to conflict with the nature. By understanding its law and harnessing its force, people can grow into personalities that are in harmony with it. Number five, and the last, the education should instill piety and courage, self-purification and self-discipline. There are many reasons why I believe Islamization of education is the step forward. First, it is important to have a good education in order to be a good citizen. Second, education should be based on Islamic principle, which would help students learn about Islam and its teaching. Number three, which is the third, it is important to teach Islamic values in school so students can learn how to be a good Muslim. Fourth, education should help students understand the universe and its mystery. The fifth, number five, it is important to develop self-discipline so students can learn to be independent. Finally, last but not least, all of these goals can be reached by using example and precept for the Quran and Hadith. I believe that moving forward in this way is the best way to achieve them all. Next, I will tell you about the education is defined as a process in which we discover and develop this ability. This is according to Langgulung 2002. Education can be seen from three aspects. First is individuals. It is often seen to have a lot of untapped potential, which is unfortunately not known to them or to others in the generals. Education can help uncover this potential and help them be developed in a way that benefits both the individual and the society. Second, the society. Society believes that education is a powerful tool that can help to perpetuate the culture and tradition of society. Number three, the interaction between individual and society. Education is an important process that helps individual connect with the society and help them develop their potential. This interaction between individuals and society can lead to improvements in the society as a whole. And the last part from my presentation for today is a wise education is what everybody deserves. The Prophet Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, peace and blessing be upon him, is reported to have said, whenever Allah wish good for a person, He make him understand the religion. Man yuridillahu bihi khairan yufaqihu fid-din. Next, the Abu Sulaiman believes that the Islamization of education is the liberation of Muslim children from a culture of fear and superstition, and the recapturing and re-establishing of the Muslim spirit of Tawheed, which means the oneness of Allah. It is the spirit of righteous pursuit of noble goals, right knowledge, and good development. Then that's only for me. Thank you for listening. Next, it will be continued by my group mates. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum. My name is Farida Iliana. My metric number is 2022144, and I'm gonna say the point 2 of the prospect, which is the process of Islamization by Al-Atas. Several initiatives have been undertaken over the past 10 years to translate the idea of the Islamization of knowledge into tangible forms, such as the creation of organizations that provide associated academic programs and the publication of monographs and textbooks. Unquestionable, Naqib Al-Atas and the late Ismail Al-Faruqi were at the forefront of this endeavor. The concept of Islamization of knowledge. A review of the writing of these eminent scholars demonstrates that they use more precise terminology associated with the concept, instead of just using the term Islamization of knowledge. Al-Atas frequently stresses and utilizes the phrase Islamization of current knowledge or the Islamization of present-day information. Al-Atas disagree with the commonly used Arabic phrase Aslama or Islamiyatul Ma'arifah because he argues Ma'arifah is a priori knowledge already there or innate and independent of experience, and it does not need to be Islamized. He prefers to use the Arabic phrase Aslamat Ulum, al-Mu'asirah or Islamiyatul Ulum al-Mu'asirah. But one may wish to argue that in the Muslim tradition, al-Ma'arifah refers to secular knowledge, whereas al-ilm refers to religious knowledge. In this sense, the former translation is correct because the knowledge that needs to be Islamized is Western, secular knowledge and not the religious knowledge. However, such distinction is doubtful because in the Islamic tradition, both ilm and ma'rifah are sometimes used interchangeably, and the distinction between secular and religious knowledge does not exist. Considering the sensitivity of the Muslim community, some scholars prefer to use other terms in place of Islamization, such as desecularization or diswesternization, and etc. Although there is some resemblance between these terms, they do not exactly have the same meaning as the term Islamization. However, they all share the same essence, which is to bring all contemporary knowledge to be consistent with the Tawhidic paradigm. Al-Attas also argues that knowledge is not neutral and can indeed be infused with a nature and content which masquerades as knowledge. Al-Attas enunciates that all knowledge of reality and of truth and the projection of a true vision of the ultimate nature of things is originally derived from the intuition. Since the metaphysics of Islam and the worldview it projects differs from any other metaphysics, naturally the concept of knowledge, methodology, and other affiliated matters derived from it will be fundamentally different. The idea of Islamization of modern knowledge within a certain metaphysical context can be meaningful due to this basic theoretical difference in metaphysics and the concept of knowledge. According to Al-Attas, Islam derives its sources from revelation confirmed by religion and affirmed by intellectual and intuitive principle. The Islamic worldview is not to be understood as a dualism, for Islam affirms only one reality and truth, and all Islamic values pertain ultimately to it alone, so that to the Muslim, individually and collectively, all individual towards change and development and progress and perfection is invariable, determined by the worldview that projects the vision of the one reality and confirms the affirmation of the same truth. Al-Attas supports his contention by mentioning some of the fundamental elements of Islam, like the nature of God of revelation, that is, the Quran, his creation, man, and the psychological of the human soul. Knowledge, religion, freedom, values, and virtues of happiness that remain original and unchanged. Al-Attas maintains that knowledge is not totally and purely the product of the human mind and experience, but it is also based on revealed truth. Thus, Islamization of contemporary knowledge makes sense only within the framework of Islamic metaphysics. Definition of Islamization of contemporary knowledge. Al-Attah's definition of Islamization of contemporary knowledge is the logical consequence and extension of his more general idea on Islamization, which seems to be a response to secularization or westernization. Islamization is defined by Al-Attah as the liberation of man first from magical, mythological, and mystic national cultural tradition, and then from secular control over his reason and his language. He argues that the concept of Islamization in general will naturally lead to the Islamization of contemporary knowledge. Al-Attas explained the Islamization of contemporary knowledge as the deliverance of knowledge from its interpretation based on secular ideology and from meanings and expression of the secular. Al-Attas clearly identifies and explains the foreign elements and key concepts that should be removed from the body of contemporary Western secular knowledge as comprising. The first one is the concept of dualism, which encompasses their vision of reality and truth. Second one, the dualism of mind and body, that is, their separation of intellectus and ratio and their stress upon the validity of ratio, their methodological cleavage pertaining to rationalism and empiricism. 3. Their doctrine of humanism, the secular ideology. core their concept of tragedy mainly in literature.